Hello my beautiful friends, thank you for coming to hang out with me today. Today's video is going to be another viewer submission. These are the stories that you have sent me to read. As always, thank you so much to everybody who submits a story and everybody in the comments who's right up in there sending their love and support. If you have a story that you would like to share and you want me to read, you can send it over to sherrilynstories@gmail.com. If you hear a little whimpering during the stories, it's our brand new little puppy. He's just sitting with me on the bed being a little snuggle butt, but he makes like the little baby puppy noises. All right, let's get started. The first story says, "Hey Sherilyn, I'm a huge fan of your channel. After watching your most recent video, I was inspired to share my story with you. I will be changing names to protect myself and my family. The only other time I told this full story was when I was talking to the FBI. As a preteen/teen in the 2010s, I was obsessed with Omegle. I never knew about Omegle, so I think that I missed the trend. Oh, or maybe it wasn't big in Canada, but I think it was in Canada because I think I've seen Canadian people talk about it. But I just, completely over my head. I would go on every night after I finished school. I was pretty shy in high school due to being bullied in elementary school. I never felt pretty, so I turned to men online to make me feel better about myself. I dated guys from all around the world. One night during my sophomore summer, I was talking to guys on Tinder when I met him. This particular guy was from down under. We will call him Zane. Zane and me hit it off right off the bat. We started Skyping on my computer. It started with an hour, 3 hours, all night, overnight. He built trust with me. He told me he was 18 and being 15, I thought it was okay. He started asking me to wear crop tops or skimpy clothes while on Skype with him. I felt bad if I didn't. I thought if I didn't, he'd break up with me. One day he asked for a picture of me in a bra. I sent it without my face. The next, he asked for one naked without the bra. I told him I felt uncomfortable and he told me if I loved him, I would send it. So I did. Months of pressuring me to do things that I didn't want to do went by. Eventually, he started making me send him what outfits I was going to wear to school, showering with him on Skype, what I could eat, and how I slept, blanket or no blanket. One cold winter night, I told him I was sleeping with a blanket, whether he liked it or not. He broke up with me and I was devastated. Oh my gosh, this is just... And I know some people are probably hearing this being like, okay, how did you let somebody, control you even with not even being there? Ugh. It happens when you can't even fathom that you would accept this. I didn't eat or leave my room for 24 hours. I was lost without him. My family all came into my room trying to get me to be happy again, or at least take a drink of water. The next morning, a long apology message was left for me on my phone. I called him and he wasn't as controlling. I found myself again. And then the next day he acted like nothing happened and he went back to being the abusive POS he was. As time went on, he started asking me if I would kill myself for him. I said yes at the time, but I couldn't comprehend killing myself at 15. I was a baby. One day he asked if I would ever date a man who went to jail. I replied it would depend on what. He told me when he was in his teens, red flag, he went to jail. He told me he had gone to jail for killing multiple dogs. I was so loyal, I brushed it off. He told me about walking the yard and looking at the moon while in jail, what movies he watched, and what books he read. The controlling continued, and during the spring of the next year, sophomore semester 2, I broke. I couldn't take it anymore. My grades were bad, my friendships were a mess, my mental health was terrible. I broke up with him, and the last words he said to me was, "I'm going to find you, but for now, go yourself. You be." Summer of my senior year, there was a knock on my door. I didn't know who it was at the time, so I snuck around the house like a ninja, like you do when you're a child. They left a card and unknowingly I gave it to my parents who had no idea what had been going on. My dad spoke to the FBI that night. They told my parents that they had found my photos and screen recordings on his computer. They had found that they had been uploaded to child pornography sites. They requested I testify about the abuse and whatever else I knew. My dad later told me this man was 20. He had done this to multiple girls. They found me from my IP address. I also found out the reason for the trial was because he had killed 3 girls. I looked up the dog killings and read the article. There were so many gory details. I lived in fear for months after the FBI came to my house. But just so everybody knows, the FBI are some of the nicest people I've ever met. I never went on Omegle again. I believe he is still in jail for what he did, or he got the death penalty. I just tell myself he's dead. The FBI gave me access to a therapist. I didn't go until I turned 21. Therapy and medicine helps a lot. To this day, I think about how it could have been me. The FBI also helped take down every photo and video on those sites, but I still worry who out there has seen those vulnerable photos of me. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. Whew. Just the invasiveness and vulnerability, it makes my heart break for you. Thank you for hearing me out and reading my story. I will be telling my kids about the creeps out there and my story. I still think I'm less victim than others out there because I didn't get the other side of things. I love you so much. M. Wow. This is why I share these stories exactly like you said there. I will be telling my kids about the creeps that are out there. It's important to know. I know so many people who have similar stories, myself included. You just like pop online. Back in my day, it was like just chat rooms. But I think back on some of the things that people were chatting with me about when I was so young, and I especially thought that they were young. And as I get older and then as I hear more and more about these types of cases, I think the likelihood of that is that they aren't. Chris Hansen really helped put that into perspective for many of us, I think. So thank you so much for sharing this, because I can't imagine how difficult it is for you. And like you said, like vulnerable, even just thinking about what could be out there, but you bringing awareness to it helps prevent something like this from happening to another young girl. So thank you. All right, our next story. Hello, Sherilyn. I found your channel not very long ago, and when I watched the videos of you sharing viewer stories, I knew you would be able to share mine, as I'm still nervous sharing it because of past accusations and judgments. My name is Jacqueline. That's not the name I was given at birth, but the name I took only 2 years ago. I'll explain more of that at the end. My story is rather long, but I will try to summarize it in the best way possible. I was born the only daughter to a family of 5, my parents and my 2 younger brothers. Growing up, I wanted a sister more than anything, but as I got older and realized what my dad was doing to me, I was thankful I didn't have a sister to suffer the same things I was. My dad, who I no longer give that title to, and I will call him K from this point on, abused my whole family. I was only about 4 when I first remember him hitting my mom, and I found out recently he was hitting her when she was carrying my second youngest brother. Emotional, mental, physical, you can see why he does not deserve the title of dad. Just a trigger warning, as the story goes in, we start to discuss sexual abuse and sexual abuse involving child. I escaped the physical abuse because I was his favorite. Being his favorite did not mean anything special. I don't know how old I was when he started to sexually abuse me. He said he started when I was 3 or 4. I just know that as a little girl, I didn't say anything because I thought all fathers did that to their daughters. I was 13 when I realized the truth. I didn't know what to do at that point or who to go to for help, so I ignored it until it got worse, to the point he started to try and arm me. I always fought back, which made him mad. When that didn't work, he began to tell me that I was too overweight and needed to work on getting skinnier. I was an adult when he set up plans to help me lose weight and took pictures of me naked. I tried to fight back, but at that point, I had reached out to people who had all left me in this situation. I was in a deep, dangerous depression and saw no way out. Every time I fought back, it only made it worse. I decided I would just accept my fate and live out the rest of my life. Of course, I was able to get out. It happened at a time I was bordering suicidal. A friend online was talking to me one night and somehow noticed I was down, even though we were just typing over chat. For some reason, I told her what was going on. She told her family, and they helped me move out. I moved across the states, leaving that horrible life behind. It took me 6 years to heal enough to press charges. There is a lot more to my story, so many layers, which would take a long time to write up. But he is now in prison, sentenced to 18 to 25 years, and he is already 60 and in poor health. I don't mean to sound sinister in any way, but it is unlikely he will leave prison. My mom and brothers are now safe, and I've slowly begun to reconnect with them. I am in therapy, doing EMDR to recover from severe anxiety, depression, bipolar 2, and PTSD. I've had to come to terms that while the other disorders might be conquered, I will have PTSD my whole life. I'm healing, though I'm still scared of men and fear that I might not ever be able to marry and have a family of my own. I am living on my own with my cat and dog, working a couple jobs and attending university. Part of the reason I've worked so hard to be able to go to school and live alone is because I want to prove him wrong all the times he said I wouldn't be able to do either. I've been taken in by the family who helped me escape. They are my family now and helped me choose my new name, Jacqueline, and the mama gave me her maiden name as my new last name. Oh, I hate that all of this happened to you, but that really touched me that you've got a chosen family. I want to begin to open up about my story so that those stuck like I was can see hope. I also want those in situations like mine to know they aren't to blame, no matter how many people try to tell them they are, and they deserve to be happy and free. I went through 28 years of living a nightmare with a monster holding me captive. Now the monster is in chains, and I've seen him for what he is, what all like him are. They pose as loving parents, but any parent doing anything like that to their child is no parent. Thank you for reading my story, and I hope anyone out there needing to hear it might find comfort and hope in it. Whew, that I can't imagine how hard it is to share. Thank you for doing that and giving somebody out there watching some hope. I feel like I can speak for everyone hearing that the family that helped you is now, your new family, and that you've changed your name and taken on a new last name, and this new chapter in your life completely starting fresh is very inspiring. All right, the next story says, "Hello, Sherilyn. I've been watching your videos for over a year now. Having you talking in the background of my life has helped me in the loneliest of times, including healing and going through extensive therapy after going full no contact with my entire family. Although this isn't the reason why, it's a good example of why I need it out. This story takes place in Cleveland, Ohio. I will not use exact names to preserve one of the victims coming across this one day. As a little girl, around 6, my second uncle, my dad's uncle, would babysit us off and on. He was the kind of guy that walked into a room full of jokes, always happy no matter what was going on." I want to also give a trigger warning that this story also does involve sexual abuse and of children. "He was never too serious, never mean, and I grew to look forward to seeing him every time he came around because he made the room so light and funny. He was one of the few people my entire life that was not physically or verbally abusive towards me. Off and on, he would have different girlfriends, and eventually he had a girlfriend that had 2 kids, a son and a daughter. My older sister and I would play with them both sometimes. The daughter was my exact age, at the time around 7. As the years went by, I never saw those kids again. I was around 15 when I was informed by multiple family members that my uncle had been R-ing that girl since the day he met her, the little girl that was my age. But no one stood up to him. Everyone let it go. My family strongly believes that speaking up on sexual assault means you're tarnishing the reputation of the abuser, and that they would never do that, especially since, as I said to a normal person, he seemed to be the best man on earth. When I was 18 years old, my uncle was shot and killed. Someone came into his house, shot him in the head, and only took under $80 from his top drawer and knocked over his trash can. The search was on. Most of my family quickly turned to blaming addicts within our family as a robbery gone wrong. I went to the funeral. It was confusing knowing I loved him and he never hurt me, but knowing he hurt a girl that was my age and how sick he was. It was hard watching the family cry for such a monster. But at the same time, I felt I had to be there for my own closure too." Wow, this is just very powerful to read. Thank you so much for being this honest and vulnerable, because we have talked about this before, where not only are there victims of crimes and that side of the family, but you also have an abuser or a killer and their family who has not asked to be grouped in that, and who also in turn kind of turn into victims themselves because they're left trying to process, why did this person do this? At one point you loved that person, so you're struggling with those feelings and emotions. And I think you've just laid this out here very beautifully for anybody who is in the same situation. That is when I found out for most of his adult life, he had been R-ing his child nieces in the family, who later became addicts, and the blame was always put on these children for being promiscuous. Oh my God. He had had one of the biggest funerals. So many people gathered that loved him despite knowing what he did. It wasn't a secret. Even his victims had shown up. all but that one little girl. A few weeks after the funeral, an arrest was made for his death. The child he had been R-ing all of those years ago, around 10 years ago at that time, had actually at some point gotten pregnant by him when she was younger. The child's horrible mother had agreed to never tell a soul and make her daughter get an abortion if my uncle paid her off every month. The daughter was forced to get an abortion. The year we both turned 18 was when my uncle was killed. He stopped sending payments when she turned 18. So the victim's uncle showed up for the money and killed my uncle. He is currently in prison, and part of me feels weird about it all. I wish he would have just done that to my uncle when it wasn't about the money. I wondered about that little girl all the time, how she feels, how she's doing, how much it must hurt to know her mother and family protected her abuser, all for a monthly check. My family all knows the truth and still praises my uncle. I'm the only person I know who actively calls him an abuser, and I even have people stop talking to me because I won't keep quiet just because he is dead. Oh, I can feel the fire in you. Good for you. Monsters aren't always creepy or mean people with red flags. Anyone can be a monster. My hope is that this can encourage just one mother to have the conversation with their child about how important it is to not trust anyone that isn't their parent, especially with their bodies. It doesn't matter if it's our grandpa, uncle, brother. Anyone is capable of harming children, and it's our responsibility to be safe instead of sorry. Your child is never too young to be aware, because this is the reality for kids every day. Thank you, Sherilyn. You're an amazing person. Would love to see you do a meet and greet one day, maybe even big dinner parties for your fans. I think I can speak for a lot of us when I say we all feel like we know you. Wow, wow, wow. You are a powerhouse. Thank you for sharing this. I just felt your passion through this, and I mean, good for you for sticking to your guns and seeing things how it is, and also kind of giving light to another side of, an abuser's family or a killer's family who's like left on the other side to just like process this all. And leaving on a light note here, I definitely have plans to want to do like a big like party for everybody where, like get together, have some drinks, mingle. So that is definitely in the works. Okay, the next story says, "Hi, Sherilyn. Let me just start off by saying you are amazing and by far my most favorite on YouTube. What you are doing for us Sippendales is incredible and brings me to tears every single episode. Oh, thank you for being our voice. Mwah. I love you all. Every episode I've watched has given me more and more courage to share my story. So thank you to all who have sent in your stories before me. My story has recently become something I think about more and more often now that I am older and have daughters around the age I was when this event took place for me. The anxiety level is high, especially now for my girls. The guilt I carry is also something I'm having trouble with currently, and I'm hoping sharing this story will help to heal myself, protect others, and maybe it will even reach the boy who saved me because I never got to thank him. My nightmare story takes place in late August of 1996. I was 10 years old. Every year, my family and I went on vacation to Long Beach Island in New Jersey. This year, my family had included everyone in the family, so it was my mom, dad, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and a slew of cousins. About 8 cousins in all, ranging from 12 to 2. So to say it was hectic would be an understatement. On Long Beach Island, there is a smaller sized amusement park with rides and an arcade, prizes, etc. It's called Fantasy Island. Well, 10-year-old me was on a mission to get as many tickets as I could that year so I could get an amazing prize from the arcade. Honestly, can't even remember what I had wanted now. Probably some kind of huge oversized stuffed animal or something of the likes. As much as I loved playing skee ball, still my favorite, there's this one game that would spit out an incredible amount of tickets every time you played. So of course I needed to play that game. I was waiting in line to play. It was that popular. My mom was so busy chasing after my brother and smaller cousins, so she said I could wait in line by myself and she would come back after the littles did what they wanted to do. There were a few people ahead of me, so we knew it was going to be a while. Not a minute or two after my mom walked away, I saw a man come through the main entrance and he immediately made eye contact with me and walked straight over to me. He had wire-like reddish hair sticking out from a dirty white baseball hat, a red scuffy but short beard, and very bright colored striped PJ looking pants, almost like MC Hammer pants. Oh, I have the visual now. He had to have been in his late 30s, early 40s. His eyes were black, or at least that's how I remembered them. He said to me urgently that he had left his puppy outside in his van and it was too hot and he didn't want to leave the pup alone. He was going to buy ice cream and asked me to come with him so I could watch his puppy while he went. He told me he would get me an ice cream too if I went with him. I told him I really shouldn't because I needed to wait for my mom. He then grabbed me by my elbow and said it would only take a minute. I took one step. I still lose my breath every time I think of this moment. That one step, my adult inner self now screams, what the F were you thinking? Because to this day, I still don't know and can't even begin to think of what could have happened. Oof, I've got like goosebumps. I took that one step, and this young teenage boy, who couldn't have been more than 14 years old, was behind me in line. He put his arm around my shoulder and said to the man, "Excuse me, you need to leave my little sister alone. She's not going anywhere with you." What a G! I turned to look at the boy who I had never seen before in my life. And when I looked back towards the man, he was running out to an exit door. That boy saved my life. That dirty blonde 14-ish-year-old boy saved my life. He stopped a kidnapping, and he is a hero to me and my family. He then got out of line with me and walked me to help find my mom. Once I saw her and pointed her out in the crowd, he asked me if I was okay. I was in so much shock. In that moment, I just said yes and ran for my mom. I didn't quite understand what had just happened, but I knew it was scary and it was not okay. At that moment, I didn't say anything to my parents. I was too afraid, and I unfortunately never saw that boy again. I did, however, run into the man again that very same day. Maybe 30 minutes later, my entire family and I were walking around outside of the area, window shopping the cute little shops. When he walked past me, smiled, turned and said, "Long time no see," and kept walking. Oh, my father heard this and immediately turned around and looked at me and said, "Who the hell was that guy?" I just put my head down and kept walking, making sure I stayed very close to my dad, grandma, aunt, and mom. It wasn't until much later that night that I broke down. I was convinced this man was outside our rental house, watching me from the big sliding glass door windows. I was in a panic. I thought that he had followed me and he was going to take me or my cousins and hurt my family. I had my very first anxiety attack that night, and that's when I finally told my parents what had happened. They did call the local police and Fantasy Island to make them aware, but I have absolutely no clue if anything ever came of it. My mom won't talk about it because she says it's one of the scariest moments of being a mother, and now that I'm a mom myself, I understand. My biggest regret in life is to this day, at 36 years old, is that I didn't say something sooner and that I didn't tell anyone right away. Maybe we could have caught him. I get so frustrated and angry at my 10-year-old self for not knowing any better. My heart breaks not knowing if this man tried to kidnap someone else who wasn't as lucky as I was to have a guardian angel behind them in line. It's overwhelmingly painful to even think about. Oh, my hope for sharing this story is for all parents to please educate your children. Make sure they know to tell somebody as soon as possible if they ever feel like something is not right, or if they ever feel threatened in any way or in danger. I would also love to reach out to that young man who saved me, just to say thank you and let him know that I will never forget him and his incredible strength and kindness that day. Again, he saved me. Who knows where I'd be today without him. Thank you for taking the time to read my story, Sherilyn. If by some chance that young man hears this story, you have my permission to share my contact info. All the best and always grateful, Amy R. Okay, I got me. Can you imagine if he comes across this, or, like this, he would be an adult now, man told his family about this incident that happened where, he was witness to something like this. And I'm not even sure if he knows what an impact that he would have had in his life, but maybe, or in your life, but maybe he remembers that moment to make sure that his children or like a child in his life is never in that same situation, or knows what to do, like on like a viewer's point, like as him, like you saved that person's life. Don't even hesitate. And then like that person, like one of his family members is watching right now and this resonates with them and then they think about it. Oh my gosh, stay tuned. Yeah, I'm putting out all the energy there so that you can thank him. And thank you for sharing, because this is so important. And it really gave me the chills. And sometimes, because I think of some situations as well from when you're really younger and you think about the what ifs. I guess my only piece of advice is just try to look at it in the beauty of having that boy behind you and that you've been able to live this life because of him. You can't think about the what ifs. I'm sure it's hard, but please don't be hard on yourself. You were 10 years old, and you never know if that happen so that you could share the story now and make people aware of it and prevent so many more of those situations from happening in the future. So thank you. All right, our next story says, "Hi, Sherilyn. Thank you for creating an amazing opportunity for people to share their stories. My story starts in 1990 in Cape Coral, which is near the Gulf of Mexico in South Florida. In May of that year, a mother named Jan Cornell left her daughter, Robin, who was 11 at the time, to be babysat by her roommate, Lisa Story. When Jan returned later that night, she heard footsteps from inside her apartment. Upon entering, Jan found the horrifying scene of both Robin and Lisa deceased, and police confirmed that they had been sexually assaulted and suffocated. Some items had been stolen, but it was a stranger scene than a simple robbery gone wrong. An ironing board was found set up with pictures of Jan's daughter Robin laid out on it. Unfortunately, the killer had escaped. Jan had likely heard them walking around the apartment just before she entered, but they had managed to get away before she or the police apprehended them. It's horrible that the person got away then, but I can't help but think Jan might have been the third victim if things had happened a little differently." This double murder was the biggest homicide investigation in Cape Coral had experienced at the time and was featured on America's Most Wanted. The Cape, as we call it, is very near the beach and it's a vacation destination. I lived in the area at the time but did not know about these homicides because I was a young child. However, nothing like this had ever really been heard of in the area before. Nowadays, Cape Coral and the surrounding cities are some of the fastest growing places in the U.S., and hundreds of thousands of people have moved here. At the time, though, it was a much smaller and quieter town, with vacationers and residents who would commute a few minutes to work in larger cities and to enjoy the beach. In no way was it seen as a high crime area or even an intense place to live. People knew their neighbors and felt safe to welcome seasonal visitors who would come year after year to enjoy the weather. The police gathered massive amounts of physical evidence, but no killer was apprehended despite their best efforts. When the case went cold, they had around 40 drawers worth of it still kept safe in their cold case storage in desperate hope that someday they might be able to solve it. Fast forward 26 years. On a normal day in 2016, one of my closest friends, Jen, was working as the assistant to the Cape's Major Crimes Unit. That week, a detective named Christy Jo Ellis was wrapping up her career. She was days from retirement after 25 years with law enforcement. During that time, she had kept in contact with Jan Cornell and continued to try to solve the case, and it was one that still haunted her as she was literally in her last couple of days of work. Even though it was considered cold to many, Christy Jo and her partner, Kurt Grau, refused to call it a cold case, as they continued to work it up to the end of their careers. My friend Jen received what she thought was a routine phone call that day in 2016. It was from another department of law enforcement letting her know that their department had received a DNA hit on a cold case. When she told Christy Jo, Christy asked, in shock, for clarification of the case name. You've probably guessed it, it was Cornell's Story. You see, even though 1990 was in the early days of using DNA, the police had collected the killer's DNA and entered it in all possible databases as they became available, with foresight for what might be possible in the future. In 26 years, nothing had ever come of it. That all changed when a man named Joseph Zeiler was arrested, still in the same county in which the murders had taken place. Zeiler had recently been jailed for felony aggravated battery for shooting his own son with a pellet gun, and as is now true in many states, he then had to comply with the DNA test. He was a match. My friend describes going into cold case storage and seeing the 40 drawers of evidence, knowing then that the police's 26-year efforts had not been in vain. Though days from retirement, Christy Jo Ellis selflessly delayed her own leisure to stay on the department and help to wrap up the case that had haunted her for so long. At a Christmas party hosted by Jen that year, we had a chance to honor Christy Jo for her commitment to a case and victims whose tragedy had meant so much to the community. Law enforcement gets a lot of criticism in the true crime community, and much of it is deserved. However, sometimes someone truly does go the extra mile to see justice done. Oh, I love that. As a result of this investigation, the Cape Coral Police Department was shortlisted in the top 5 for DNA Hit of the Year. Oh my gosh, they do these? At a global convention in Austria. That is so cool. Judged by an international panel of forensic experts. More importantly, Jan Cornell lived to see the answers she had been searching for nearly 3 decades. None of this brings back beautiful Robin and Lisa, but it at least provides some closure for family, friends, and the community. I wish I could tell you it's all over, but COVID and other delays mean Zyler's trial hasn't happened yet. He still awaits his day in court for burglary, sexual battery, and first-degree homicide. Currently, his trial is scheduled to take place this October, and reportedly the death penalty will be sought by the prosecution. Everyone involved in this case wishes it could have been solved earlier, but I want to encourage anyone who is still trying, still pushing, and still keeping an unsolved case in front of law enforcement. Jan never gave up hope of finding truth about her daughter and friend, and Christy Jo never gave up searching for the answer. Please don't give up. Amy, wow, that was pretty inspiring. Like you said, I mean, it's devastating that Lisa and Robin are no longer here, but there are so many families out there who are fighting for answers, fighting for justice, and feeling like they're just being stonewalled. And this is very moving and encouraging, so thank you. All right, our next story says, Dear Sherilyn, I'd like for my name to not be used in this for my own safety, but I need this story to be told. My friend was murdered by the people he considered as best friends, and justice still hasn't been given. My friend, I'm going to call him Chad here. Chad had just turned 21 and was hanging out with his friends. Both of these so-called friends were known for being sketchy and extremely dangerous. But Chad didn't care. He said they were like family to him. The night of the murder, I went to Chad's friend's apartment to see him and wish him a happy birthday before I left for college. Little did I know that would be the last time I would ever see him alive. I had noticed a gun in the room. I knew it wasn't fake, but I didn't want to question it because frankly, I was terrified of these people from the beginning. I also knew that one of the guys was a drug dealer, so I just assumed he had it for his safety. Not pointing it out or saying something is now one of my biggest regrets. Just 3 hours after I left the apartment, I got a call from my friend screaming, "Oh my gosh, Chad's dead. He was shot." I couldn't even fathom that someone I had just seen was gone so soon. Nobody had any information, just that he was dead. I knew from the beginning that his friend, Pedro, had done it. The other friend that was there, Steve, was definitely involved in sketchy things, but I knew he wasn't a killer. Pedro, on the other hand, was. He had tried to kill people over drugs before. He had been in and out of prison all throughout high school, abused his girlfriend to the point that she had to move to a different state, and overall was a shit person. But when the report came out, we were all shocked. At first, every article explaining it made it sound like a suicide. But would someone really just randomly shoot themselves in front of friends? I didn't believe it for a second. And now more recently, we have found out that Steve was sentenced to life in prison for shooting Chad. I was so upset when I found this out, but I didn't want to question anything because I trusted authorities. I then started hearing from different people that Pedro was talking about how he pulled the trigger. He killed Chad, but threatened to kill Steve and his sisters if he didn't take the blame. So Steve said that they were playing around with the gun and it went off and shot him point blank in the head. I chose to believe that it was an accident for my own peace, but deep down, I really feel like it wasn't. Pedro was charged with possession of an unregistered firearm, and the trials are beginning soon. It makes me sick to my stomach that this man gets to walk free while an innocent one is in jail for life. But there's nothing I can do. I don't have proof, and if I try to speak out, I know I'll be next. There was only those 3 people in that apartment, so no one can say what happened besides them, and it sucks. Thank you for reading my story. I love your videos so much and how much you truly care for your fans. Thank you, Sherilyn. I am just trying to process that. I don't know what I would do if I was in your situation. Like you said, you've got this like gut feeling, which, I mean, if we know anything, it's usually pretty powerful. But I mean, that can only take you so far in cases like this. Like you said, you need proof, and then just to like sit there and think about it and know that the events probably didn't go the way that they're being told. It's got to just feel like such a slap in the face. I'm so sorry you're going through this. And I pray that someday, somehow, the truth will come out. And if this person is the one who did this, they will see justice. Stay strong. You've got this. And thank you for sharing. Okay, our next story says, Hi, Sherilyn. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the amazing work you do and to send you a huge hug from Spain. Oh, I would love to go to Spain and get this hug in real life. So my story starts 6 years ago when I moved to the US as an exchange student. I stayed there for a year and met a guy who quickly became my boyfriend. I was so in love with him and so convinced that he was the love of my life that I never paid attention to his alcohol problem or how he would get super violent with me, because I loved him and he loved me, so that's all that mattered to me at the time. The relationship lasted for 2 years, and I even stayed there an extra year, moving in with him while the abuse got worse and worse. I didn't tell anyone until one day when I called my dad crying and told him everything. By the next day, I already had a plane ticket to come back home with my family and work on myself and all the trauma that situation left me. Time passed and he kept contacting me, my family, and my friends, sending letters and presents to my address, as well as my friends and family, but I never replied to him or said anything to him about it until he stopped a year or so ago. The thing is, while I was there, I had the email that my university provided me, and I was subscribed to the local newspaper of the town we lived in. It was a couple hours away from where we used to go to uni there. I never looked at that email until the other day, when I needed a document that I had sent from that email. I was checking all I had received in the past year, and I noticed some notifications from the newspaper, and one of them had his name. I was so surprised and I couldn't help but check. And there it was, a picture of him getting arrested right next to the picture of a girl with red hair and blue eyes. The thing is, I am also ginger with blue eyes. Apparently they had been dating for a couple months when, while on drugs and alcohol, he stabbed her to death. I was so scared when I saw that. And since then, I honestly can't stop thinking about it and wondering if it could have been me if I hadn't called my dad that day. Maybe I'm being too egocentric about it, but I really need to admit she really looks like me. Sorry if my English is not perfect, and again, thank you so much for covering all of the cases and bringing awareness. Don't you ever apologize. Your English is perfect. And that gave me the heebie-jeebies. If I was you and I saw somebody who looked similar to me that an abusive ex dated and that person was no longer alive, I mean, I guess maybe we would both be egocentric. I think egotistical. In thinking that, that's fair. And this is a very powerful story to anybody who might be in a situation like that right now and has not gotten themselves out yet, who's not made that phone call that gives that push that they need to leave. And that is the difference from turning this story into you not being a victim that is no longer alive. So thank you for sharing. All right, our next story says, "Hi Sherilyn, I just found your channel and I've been listening to other stories and felt compelled to share mine. In February 2019, my sister and her family were going through a tough time. Her husband, Jason, is a recovering alcoholic and also has some mental health problems, but he has a good heart. My oldest niece, 13 at the time, and him don't get along at all. To make it simple, their personalities clash and create one hell of a storm." Back to 2019. My sister had asked Jason to leave and get help because she couldn't take her husband and daughter screaming at each other anymore. She gave him money and sent him on his way in their truck. Apparently, he had used the money to buy a phone. I don't remember why. I thought he already had one. So he needed to figure out how to replenish the funds. I'm not 100% sure about the order of events, but I know he traveled up to the Columbia County. Is that Wisconsin? WI? I gotta check. Yes, it is. I got it. So he traveled up to Columbia County, Wisconsin, and decided to rob a hotel at gunpoint. No one was hurt physically. I believe it was a day or two later, he ran out of money again, so he drove around, found a house he thought was empty, and broke into their cellar. As Jason was about to leave, he heard footsteps coming down the stairs and someone cocking a gun, so he cocked his. It was the homeowner, Keith Wolf, who was home with his wife and younger daughter that night. They were hiding in a closet while he investigated. A shot was fired and Jason fled. Mr. Wolf's wife found her husband at the bottom of the stairs with a gunshot wound to his head. For 2 years, their family had to live without closure. Jason and Keith didn't know each other. Keith was very well known and loved in his small rural area. It was a case of wrong place at the wrong time. After Jason fled, he pulled over and attempted to take his own life twice. When that didn't work, he called the police. He was away at a mental health facility getting help for 6 months before returning home. For 2 years, Jason carried this with him. 2 years, Mr. Wolf's family didn't have closure. In 2021, he was called to the local police department regarding something to do with his gun. He still had it since he didn't get caught. Since there was still a mask mandate, he was given a disposable to wear. The detectives used it to test his DNA. He had left his boot print and a shell casing as well. A few days later, SWAT came and got him. They tore the house apart looking for evidence. The police went to my sister's work to question her. She had no idea. None of us did. Jason was doing well. They were even working on their family. He was gone before my sister got home, so she didn't even get to say goodbye. I'll never forget the text my sister sent me. She sent me the link to the news story and said, "My kids' lives are ruined." It was a lot for us all to process because my sister has 4 kids. It's so easy to have sympathy for Mr. Wolf's family, but now my nieces and nephews have to grow up without a dad as well. People often automatically condemn people like Jason. Yes, he had his flaws. We all do. But he has good in him. He dropped everything to come and rescue my daughter and I from Tennessee when living there didn't work out. Him and my sister helped us get us back on our feet, as well as never asked for it to be paid back. He hasn't been sentenced yet, but he confessed immediately. I assume he's pleading guilty, but I'm not 100% sure. His family misses him, but he's where he needs to be. Our mom thinks this was a blessing in disguise. She's never liked him. My sister has taken him back so many times after he's gone off the deep end, and this is God's way of removing him from the home permanently before something like this happened to my sister or one of the kids. It's so crazy how so many lives can be destroyed by someone else's split-second decision. My sister still can't bring herself to go back to work. She lives in income-based housing. She's been there for 14 years, and they live off savings for now. The kiddos are okay, but their younger daughter still struggles the most. I'll attach some news articles for you. They might give more or better info than I can. I am at a loss for words here. I didn't even realize that the stories that I was choosing were kind of going to fit quite cohesively with like today's reading, because you completely nailed it here that there are also victims that are left in the wake on the other side of these tragedies. And it has to just be such a hard and confusing place to be, because I'm sure they feel like they can't really talk about their feelings and those emotions, and even maybe loving somebody who did something terrible in their life, because there's a victim and their family who do deserve all of the love and attention. They never asked for anything to happen to them either. So hearing these perspectives that we really don't get too often really gives some more insight. So I thank you for being brave enough to do that. All right, this is our last story. It says, "Hi, Sherilyn. First off, I have to say I absolutely love your content. I watch all of the true crime YouTubers, but you're my favorite. Don't tell the others." Oops. Also, thank you for giving us a platform to share our stories. My story takes place in Greenwood, South Carolina, my hometown. Greenwood is a small town where everyone knows everyone and everyone knows everyone's business. If you don't personally know someone already, you're bound to know someone who knows someone who knows someone. You get the point. There's a big barbecue festival held every summer in Greenwood. Everyone that has moved out of town, including myself, always comes back for the barbecue festival. It's a 3-day event where Main Street is shut down, so all local vendors and food trucks line up and we eat barbecue. That sounds amazing. I'm salivating right now. A few weeks ago, we had the barbecue festival, and on the night of Friday, July 8th, there was a shooting at Uptown Grill, a little ways down from Main Street. Kiona Hill was murdered. Kiona was a 29-year-old woman who I had the pleasure of knowing while I worked at Walmart. Kiona had such a beautiful smile and was very down to earth and true to herself and everyone around. She and I bonded when we worked layaway together a few years back. We had an amazing team of 5 women, myself and Kiona included, and she always gave us such an inspirational talk before all the craziness of the holidays hit. Kiona just lost her mother right around her birthday in February of this year. She had a 9 or 10-year-old son who is now left without a mother or grandmother. Let me tell you what happened the night Kiona was murdered. Christopher Longshore, a Greenwood man who was out on bond for a shooting at a restaurant in Greenwood 5 years ago, had an altercation at the Uptown Grill a few weeks prior to the recent shooting. He was kicked out of the grill and was angry and told the workers that they were dead. He chose to exact his vengeance the night Kiona and a friend decided to go out and have a few drinks. He shot multiple times into the grill, but only one shot was fatal. Kiona died because of a criminal who had anger issues. Oh my gosh, my stomach. Thankfully, Kiona was/is loved by many of us in Greenwood. Like I said, small town. So I know that justice will be brought for her. But it goes to show how flawed the system is. Why was Christopher Longshore out on bond in the first place? Out on bond for attempted murder. This has completely shaken me, my friends, and everyone in town to the core. Not only did this murder take place during our beloved barbecue festival, it was so nonsensical and completely unrelated to Kiona. Because of a criminal with anger issues, a son no longer has a mother. Of course, this happened a few weeks ago, so everything is still fresh and up in the air when it comes to sentencing and everything. It's so chilling because the next morning when I woke up to read on Facebook that Kiona had been murdered, I still could see her Snapchat story from 30 minutes prior to the murder. Oh my gosh. Thank you for reading my story, Sherilyn. It means the world. Love, Amber. Oh my gosh. Please keep us posted with what happens here. I'm gonna have to look into this. This just sounds devastating. And like you said, like they're just so unnecessary. And yes, why was he out? I'm sorry. But I mean, if you are a pedophile, if you attempt to murder somebody, you don't deserve to be let out. Yet we just keep seeing history repeat itself. It's not okay. Please keep us posted with this. All right, you guys, that is it for me today. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for sending love in the comments, and thank you for sending your stories in. If you have a story you want to send in, you can do so at sherrilynstories@gmail.com. All right, I'll see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon.